Mark White joins me in the studio now, our home and security editor. Mark, lots of accusations being thrown out here. Aliens, the start of World War III, bog-standard military espionage. What is it?
Well, the military authorities in the US, if they do know, they're not telling us, I'm sure for good reason from their part. They have said, of course, that first incident of the balloon that was hovering over the US for at least 7 days, eventually shot down off the US coast there, was, they believe, a Chinese spy balloon. The Chinese have admitted it was their balloon. They've said it was a weather-gathering data balloon. They've also claimed responsibility for a balloon that flew over Colombian airspace as well. These three latest incidents that happened over the weekend, three in the space of 3 days, they've not attributed, the military authorities in the US have not attributed those particular objects to any country. So clearly, given that, there is a void. People have been speculating, and you heard there within the piece that US general not willing to rule out even aliens as being an origin.
Well, I'm glad you've brought it up, Mark.
Well,
it's because our very serious editor of Home and Security here, Mark White, has opened the alien door for us now, ladies and gentlemen. Interesting that they are not deciding to necessarily rule out the little green men just yet. Speculation mounting, because not all of these objects have been, quotes unquote, weather balloons, spy balloons, have they? Some rumours about whether or not they're kind of these little tic-tac oblong-shapy ones with their own propulsion system and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think because one of the objects that was spotted was described as being octagonal in shape, another cylindrical, with no apparent means of propulsion that the pilots who shot these objects down could see. Of course, it's intriguing. It's very unlikely to be extraterrestrial in origin, but, the very fact that the US are not ruling it out allows this sort of speculation. But more likely, and sources actually are suggesting this, it's been quoted now, actually by US news channels, that there are more likely to be potentially weather-gathering balloons, these latest three that have been shot.
And people, of course, are, I think, rightly concerned about the geopolitical turmoil that the world appears to be in now. I think we've been predicting the start of World War III for, well, probably since the end of World War II, actually. So let's not get ahead of ourselves too much. But clearly the Ukraine-Russia situation has increased people's concerns about some kind of nuclear holocaust. And then we end up with China, of course, posturing over Taiwan. Now, if indeed these are Chinese government-related objects, the Chinese government, they've hit back. They've said, well, we shoot things like this down all the time. Bit of tit for tat, as far as they're concerned. How worried should people be now that we see what's going on in Ukraine and we see that allegedly China is now on some kind of manoeuvres over the US?
Well, I think people should be concerned that there is a greater instability internationally, particularly between the West and Russia, of course, because of what's happening in Ukraine of late, but also China. I mean, China was described as a strategic challenge for the UK. We had Transport Minister on this morning describing them as hostile in that sense. So there is a strategic review that is underway. It's a security review. Quite what China will be determined to pose after that, we await to see. But there is absolutely concern about the way in which China has conducted itself of late, both in terms of its political reach, but also militarily in recent years. And Taiwan, of course, being one of these areas where there's a great deal of concern about the potential for some kind of conflict down the road.
Absolutely. Mark, you'll be back again before we know it. Thank you very much. Mark White there, our home and security editor.